Hello and welcome to this commentary of Dreamland. My name is Gary Russell, I'm the director, and with me is...
Phil Ford, who wrote it.
So come on then, Phil. Why did you write Dreamland? How did this come about?
I wrote Dreamland because you asked me, Gary. You asked me very nicely, got down on bended knee, and I said, yes. Because after the Infinite Quest, which was done, 2 years ago? Which had been really successful. There had been this desire to go back and take Doctor Who into animation again, but do it slightly differently. And so it's a different style of animation this time.
We went very much for the 3D look this time, whereas Infinite Quest was much more straightforward, standard 2D, and indeed a lot of it, I think, was very flash-based. Whereas this is proper sort of gaming style animation. So why did you choose America in the 1950s?
Well, the thing about doing animation, the only real good reason for doing animation is to tell a story that you couldn't really feasibly be able to do in the live action show, and to take the Doctor back to 1950s Nevada desert would have been nigh on impossible. And plus, when I had the idea of taking him to... Because rather than doing the Infinite Quest... As the Infinite Quest was kind of episodic, each episode was in a different place, I wanted to do a story which would be more kind of cliffhanger-based. And so the idea was to take us to somewhere we couldn't go, like 1950s America.
And so we have the great sort of standard... cliches, if you like.
Oh, absolutely. It's
of the brilliant diner and the Native American Indian.
Yep.
Who, if I remember rightly, in one very early draft, you had him actually speaking.
I did. Shoshone, I think.
Shoshone, wasn't it? Yes.
But to be honest, I think the reason that we finally dropped that was because it was very difficult to actually find some Shoshone. It was actually an opportunity for the Doctor to speak some Shoshone. I wanted him to come out with a traditional Shoshone greeting, but had all sorts of problems.
And the other thing that again, going back to the great, brilliant thing of these kinds of movies, these kind of 50s B movies that we're looking at.
Yeah.
Is the Men in Black.
Yeah, the Men in Black. I mean, the whole thing is, as you call them cliches, I would say they're archetypes of this kind of 1950s. And it's not just simply the B movie thing. It's also very much kind of bringing the Doctor into the whole kind of established mythology of, in inverted commas, real UFOs, if you like.
Yes.
So we have Area 51 and we have the Men in Black.
A little word here about some of the actors in this scene. Russell T Davies, bless him, set me on a very good task when it came to directing this. He challenged me to find a genuine Native American Indian actor to play this part. And
In London.
And do you know what? We pretty much succeeded.
Yeah.
Because Tim Howard, who plays, is, I think, a quarter Native American.
It's Cree, isn't it?
And
wasn't it Cree?
I think it was that.
I'm sure
and
it's
also
Cree,
he's
yeah.
sort of half Canadian, half American. He's got a bit of everything in him.
Yeah.
And it was brilliant because I was able to say to Russell, you thought I wouldn't be able to do this. And I did. And then we have fantastic Georgia here as Cassie, doing the American accent she inherited from her mum.
And brilliantly. I mean, She just does it so well. I mean, I know that you're not a fan of Brit actors doing bad American accents, but she was just fabulous.
She was amazing. Yeah. Everyone else, I did make sure I cast genuine Americans and or Canadians to do all the American accents.
And a fab cast.
It was a brilliant cast. It was lovely to pull them all together. I love the Viper. Sorry, I'm just taken completely with what you were saying earlier about things you couldn't do in live action. And the Viperox, I think, here is a really quite brilliant example of what you couldn't do on live action TV that animation gives you the ability. Because, yes, you could do this in CG on TV, but there's something so completely alien about it that it works brilliantly for animation.
Absolutely. And I just think that later on when they appear en masse just look so fabulous. And of course that would be something really difficult to do. And I love that how you get a cloud of dust as the copter settles. That's really so realistic.
Little point here: those two soldiers is actually two different actors. That was Ryan, but the first one that spoke was actually Clark Peters, who later plays Night Eagle.
Ah.
But after we'd done the first day of recording, I thought, actually, for this one scene, I wanted 2 different voices. I think it worked better. So I asked Clark just to do me that one line, and
So
bless him, he did.
So it was a good thing that we had 2 days recording in the end, because actually it went so well, didn't it? It went so quickly that we could actually do the whole thing in one day.
Heaven forbid, I'd never say that. No, we could have done. But I was glad, because on that second day, it gave us the chance to look back at some of the stuff and go, actually, we could tweak this or we could tweak this.
But I mean, the cast just got so behind it, didn't they? And I mean,
yes.
And I mean, they were all amazing, and David was just so enthusiastic in the
The best thing about David Tennant is always his enthusiasm and how infectious that is for everybody. And he comes in and he treats everything so brilliantly and so seriously with it. I love working with him. I've worked with David before he became the Doctor. And he's always had this total commitment. He loves audio work as well, which is a real advantage when you're doing animation. But because he knows the Doctor so well, even though obviously the animation is done sometime after the voice work, he knew how the animation was going to look. He knew how to perform the voice to make the animation come to life.
But the other thing, the great thing about him that I found on Dreamland and on Waters of Mars was that actually the great thing about him is you can't always predict how he's going to do a line. Mm-hmm. You know, the number of times that I've written lines and think, oh, we'll do it in this way, knowing the Doctor. And he actually does it in a completely different way, which is just fabulous.
And it's always better. It's
so
much better than you thought it
never
could
disappoints, Never disappoints.
This is Stuart Milligan playing Colonel Stark here, who was the first actor I cast in my head. When your script came through, when the very first draft of the script came through and that character was there, I immediately went, I want Stuart Milligan for that, because I'd worked with him before in my days at Big Finish.
He's a perfect choice. I mean,
and he's just brilliant.
Absolutely the right voice for the character. It's so good.
Now, if I remember rightly, this, at one point, when we did the episodic versions, this was going to be... Was the previous scene the end of the first episode originally?
Yes, it was. Yes,
So this was the start of episode 2 originally, wasn't it? And then we decided to make the first episode a double-length one. Yeah. Now, that's a real nice historical reference, isn't it? That's real,
the Bear
River Massacre.
Yes, it is, yes.
This is what I love working with you about, because in the middle of all this fiction, in the middle of everything, you'll throw in these little real references to stuff.
I try to.
And I sit there on the internet going, what does that mean? I have to look that up. Oh, it's real. Oh, Phil's done his research.
Yeah, and I actually did research it. I did actually think, is there something I can reference to? It wasn't something which was bubbling around in my head. But I kind of think, particularly when you do these things, these fantastical stories, it's always good to try and get in a bit of reality in there to try and ground it. And I always like to educate people a little if I can.
I think it's always a good idea. If you can come away with something and someone will go to the internet to look something up and find out a bit of history, then I think, we've absolutely done our job.
I think we've done that a few times in Doctor Who over the years, haven't we?
There's a lovely little animation touch here that Little Loud did, which I really love. When we go to the next close-up of Cassie, and you see reflected in her eye the swirly pattern that's meant to be hypnotising them.
I never noticed
they
that
did
before.
that. I thought that was superb.
Because I know when the Men in Black first turn up in that first scene, something I didn't notice the first time I watched it, but it's these little touches, is the light on Mr. Dread's glasses, on the leg of his glasses. How it just catches it, and it's those little touches.
I got them later on, because I so loved that. Later on, I got them to do the same thing when we see the Scorpius flies and they reflect it in Suruba Velek's eyes as well, because I just thought that was a brilliant movement. This is one of my favourite scenes. So beautifully done. So clever.
It is.
And nicely lit. Little Loud's animation, Darren, the director at Little Loud, who directed the animation, his use of lighting is phenomenally good.
The lighting is really good all the way through.
Really understands.
I mean, it's from this kind of shadowy lighting, and then that kind of blistering heat lightning that you actually get when they're out in the desert later on. It's just fantastic. I just love that bit that just missed there with the Doctor's head coming popping out.
Yes. I'd love to take credit for that, but that was entirely Darren's doing. He came up with that idea. Oh, nice alarms.
How they've been found.
Little shout out here, I think, to Peter Jeffrey, who did all our sound effects and the final dub and everything, and just bringing it to life with all the effects and all the Foley and everything. He was brilliant at this.
But also the music as well. I mean, the music throughout the whole episode. I just loved, and around this point as well is when I kind of noticed, actually, the music actually does sound like the music from a 1950s movie.
Doug Sinclair, who took all of Murray Gold's music and fitted it into Dreamland like this, he's brilliant because he knows Murray's music so well. He knew every single kind of bit. He's got 3 years' worth of music or 4 years' worth of music to play with. And he knew each kind of thing that would suit each scene. It's fantastic. Phenomenal brain Doug's got for all of Murray's music and how to make it fit. I think we only made one change, actually. At one point, in one sequence, he used a bit of music that was very similar, if not the actual Cyberman music. And we said, oh, probably shouldn't use that. It's a little too recognisably Cybermen.
I just love this bit where we see Saruba Velek for the first time. And it's a real grey alien in Doctor Who. I just think it's marvellous. Well, of course, I wrote it. You know,
it's just there's so much emotion in that face.
Absolutely.
She's
incredible.
Quite fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, naughty Doctor.
Yeah, which reminds me, going back to the diner, when they escape from Mr. Dread, the Doctor fires the Sonic at is it the jukebox?
It's a jukebox, yes.
Which, of course, in the script, originally it was a tray of eggs.
That's right.
Which
we were
exploded.
heating them up and exploding.
Yeah,
well,
which I
yes.
presume was just too difficult to animate.
It was. We tried it. We did it in the storyboard stage, and it just never worked. It never looked like eggs heating up and exploding. It just looked a bit silly. Yeah. So we came up with the jukebox thing as being a bit more 50s and a bit more believable. This is a nice moment.
Stepping out of the shadows.
Stepping out of the shadows. This is David Warner, a man, again, I've worked with in the past who I utterly adore.
You're such a name dropper.
He's just got the best voice in the history of the universe.
And he was absolutely perfect for Lord
and
Aslock.
He's so much fun to be around as well. He's done so much work in the UK and in Hollywood and everything, and there's nothing particularly starry about David. He just comes in and he has a laugh, and he knew David Tennant because I'd worked with them both at Big Finish before, and they've stayed friends, and it just adds to the atmosphere when you can just have a room full of actors who are just firing off each other.
It was a great couple of days, those days, recording.
Yes.
I loved them. And here, of course, is the spacecraft, which later turns up in the Sarah Jane Adventures.
The Sarah Jane Adventures, yes.
What a coincidence.
It was quite nice to be able to tie Sarah Jane Adventures and this together.
Yeah.
I just need to give a little shout out here to a friend of mine called Alex Mallinson, who I got in to throw in an extra line here about not shooting at the spaceship.
Yes, I noticed that.
Because we needed it, and Alex did it at a moment's notice.
That's cool.
Which is very kind of him.
I mean, this whole sequence was probably the first sequence that I imagined when I was writing it. You know, you take the Doctor to Area 51 to Dreamland. There's got to be a flying saucer, and let's see the Doctor flying a flying saucer.
And, of course, flying it badly.
Of course.
or, as you said earlier, the outside, but also the inside is completely based on Arwell, our designer, on Sarah Jane. He actually designed all this for Sarah Jane. We gave his designs to Little Loud, and they copied them and did them in animation beautifully.
I was just so nervous that they wouldn't match up, but they do, and it's just incredible.
It's fantastic. I love this bit.
And it looks stunning, doesn't it? I mean, that looks so cool.
That's such a good crash.
And the planes are great as well.
Yes. Again, we did an awful lot of stuff of really making sure we researched 50s planes, 50s helicopters. Everything had to look. It's kind of curious mixture of real 50s Americana and that slightly strange sci-fi Doctor Strangelove version of American
TV
paranoia as well.
Yeah.
So there is, there are odd touches, and you go, well, maybe being Area 51, they've nicked a bit of Alien stuff now and again and tried to adapt it. This is a sequence I love. I was very keen on going inside these buildings and watching them walk through.
Yes.
So you sort of got the impression that maybe someone is watching them. And it's never said whether or not there are Viperots watching them, but I just think it's a nice way, rather than just have people casually walk into a town, to do it through these kind of windows and barriers.
It just highlights the
makes it more
tension, doesn't it?
interesting. Yes.
Yeah, that's great. And again, the lighting is fantastic.
There's a lovely moment here with the matches.
Yes, I know. It's
where
marvellous.
Darren's lighting is just phenomenal. It's very instinctive animation director. Knows how to do things slowly, knows how to make things look effective. Whereas I think a lot of people would have just gone bang and had that light come on. And he makes sure the glow comes up slowly. And it just adds to so much. And it's all underlit as well. I love underlighting. I hate overhead lighting. And because it's a little kerosene lamp, he just uses the underlighting beautifully. Really adds to it. And down the hole, Alice in Wonderland style. Again, look at those shadows.
Yeah.
Beautifully done. So many people, when they do animation, don't bother doing shadows, don't bother doing textures. And Little Loud's work here is really, really cool. Very, very impressed. That's a great line. I love Jimmy. Jimmy's just, he's such a cool character. Nothing phases him. And when it does, he's like phased for half a second and then goes, I can deal with this.
Well, he's a tough guy. The thing just quickly about Lord Aslock here, the thing that I noticed is his eye thing.
Yes,
and that little
blinking
noise as well with the blinking. It's so cool.
Yes. That would be me. Love that line. That would be... The moment you wrote that, I thought, God, yes, that is so David's Doctor. And again, it's one of those lines, you knew how he was going to do it.
Yes.
And then when he did it in studio, he did it slightly differently.
Absolutely,
and you thought, even better.
Yeah.
Even better.
But I love this thing as well. I keep saying I love this thing when I wrote it, but the whole thing about the two hearts, I can hear them beating and we'll note their rhythm. But of course, the whole thing about the Viperoc's sense of hearing is actually so crucial to the whole story. But of course, the way that we ultimately get rid of the Viperocs was actually changed, wasn't it? Because that was earlier in the scripting process. They still used the ionic fusion bar weapon, but its effect was just simply to remove them all and send them all back to Viperon.
That's right.
And Russell actually didn't like that, did he?
No.
So I went back to the drawing board and actually didn't take very long. We've been going on about their hearing all this time. Wouldn't it be cool if? And actually, it's one of those wonderful things when there's a change necessary in the script, but actually all the foreshadowing is already there. It wasn't actually something that I had to go back and do. It was just literally a tweak at the end.
Because you're clever. This, I have to say, this is absolutely my favourite moment in the entire story. This was, I worked very hard with Little Loud, kept saying bigger, bigger, bigger. Yeah. It's that moment in Alien where they find the mummified alien pilot. And the best way to get the scale is this tiny little bit. Suddenly see at the bottom, you see the three, and you realise how big the Queen is.
So it's actually an homage to two Alien movies. To Alien and Aliens. Because, of course, there's the with Sigourney Weaver in the...
Oh, I see,
yes.
Yes.
Which is actually what I was thinking of, but you've got...
I just went with Alien. I just love it, and the eggs and everything. Yeah. That took quite a few designs to get the eggs right. They never, at first, really looked like sort of something that had eggs inside, and we reworked and reworked and reworked that. This is brilliant. I presume this is your homage to the second Indiana Jones movie.
It is indeed. Well, actually, it is kind of. But what happened in this was something that changed because of something that Russell didn't say to me in a scripting meeting. He kind of, because we did this, they came out into the mine and they used the car for something, but I can't quite remember what it was. But they actually ran out of the mine. And Russell said, when I saw the car, I thought you're going to do like the Indiana Jones thing. And he never told me to do it, but I thought, actually, that's a much better idea.
And there's a little homage here I asked for, which is the right stuff. I said to Darren, that's what this scene looks like. They're coming out of the dust like the spacemen in the right stuff. And then
we do like our homage, don't we?
Yes, of course we do. This is a fantastic sequence. This is like 2.5 minutes of dialogue, but so beautifully directed by Darren's team.
I thought you were going to say so beautifully written then.
Well, obviously, the whole thing's beautifully written, Phil. I love the Alliance of Shades. I love the whole concept of Mr. Dread and his 3 associates.
But again, this is all going back again into UFO mythology, because there are those people who, if you believe that the Men in Black existed, there are those people who believe that the Men in Black belong to a government agency who keep flying saucers secret. And then there are also the people who believe that the Men in Black are actually aliens. So it's kind of a nice way to bring the two ideas together.
And of course, you then took it to another level and you make them all robots.
Absolutely. Well, actually, no, to be honest, that is another part of mythology. There are those also who think they are robots. So
I had a very, very nerdish discussion with Darren when we were directing this sequence about basing the whole hand gun thing on an old, I think it's Gene Colan, copy of Marvel Comics' The Inhumans, where somebody's hand turns into a gun. And everybody else in the room was looking at us, not knowing what we were talking about. And Darren and I were just having this really quite tragic Marvel Comics discussion because he knew exactly what I meant.
yeah, I can see that conversation in my head right now.
Now, this next sequence, we did a lot of passes on, actually. This took a lot of time to get right. Because
Is this the firing the arrows?
The firing the arrows, because you have to be so careful that you're not actually seeing anyone in pain from arrows on CBBC. Because everything had to be very robotic, very solid.
I love the clunk when he falls
Yes,
over there.
and we kept putting sparks into to help
because as well, I think in the script the arrows, if I remember correctly, hit them in the back of the
neck.
Neck. Yeah.
I'm afraid I changed that and said
okay.
no. That
Who
was
knows
too
where their
horrific.
central processor unit is kept?
Clark Peters, the lovely Clark Peters.
The biggest tragedy of the whole project, though, because he was just so wonderful.
Yes.
You know, and because you don't know when you're writing one of these things who's going to be cast, but his voice, he was just so amazing. I just wish he'd been in it for so much more.
I think there's a whole spin-off series here of the adventures of Jimmy, Cassie and Night Eagle without the Doctor, dealing with Colonel Stark and his constant array of aliens.
Maybe. Oh, there's a good idea there.
And now
this is just marvellous.
Nicholas Rowe, an actor who I have wanted to work with for donkey's years, was the young Sherlock Holmes for Disney many, many years ago, back in the 80s.
I remember it.
Oh, what a gorgeous voice. He's got one of those voices that has a timbre that's really just... When you're in a studio, everything vibrates very slightly. He's just got the most beautiful voice for audio work. I was so pleased to be able to get him.
And this is just such a beautiful sequence as well. I just love this whole sequence from... I mean, it looks great and it sounds great and it's just all so emotional.
Yes. And then we have that lovely flashback to the war stuff and go through his eye to see it, which again is I think is down to I can't remember. Did you put that in the script? I think it was.
I can't remember. I
think
remember.
it was Darren. I think
I don't think I did. I don't think I would have suggested that. Not that I think it's a good. I think it's a marvelous thing. I just don't think I would.
Oh, look! It's a flashback to the pre-credit sequence on episode 1. Oh, look at that texture on that alien.
Beautiful, isn't it?
It's so real. It so looks like proper skin.
And here we go.
And in through the eye. And then this is another comics discussion for me and Darren where we talked about sort of Jack Kirby's Fourth World stuff.
Love the bandana. Yes. But do you know what it reminded me of? In Quatermass and the Pit.
Oh, the little imps.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
That tear. That's pure Darren. He brought the tear into it.
Amazing.
That was fantastic. Oh, I love that. Without provocation. It's a gorgeous voice. Nice little effect that...
and again, the
Peter
just
and his
lighting
team
is just
put on.
fantastic.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah. And the lights in the look at that. The detail, that lighting is just there and just for a second, then it's gone.
And, you know, the amount of... Look at that wooden chair. That's not just... That every part of that wood is detailed. It's been sat down and thought about how would you make a wooden chair.
And there's Colonel Stark, who just had to show up and spoil things, didn't he? The flickering of the lights, it just...
very much in my head, Colonel Stark, if this had been done in live action and we had a Hollywood budget, would have been played by Brian Dennehy.
Yeah.
Absolutely, he would have been the physical presence for that would have been fantastic. Little things like this, I like a little bit of camera shake just to get that sort of idea that the truck is moving on rough ground.
Yeah, and I love that shake later on when the Doctor's on top of the building.
Yes.
Looking over the top. That's marvellous.
Ah, the famous operations room. This is our Doctor Strangelove moment, really. This is great. And look who's in there.
Hey. Did both of the soldiers have name tags on their names?
Yes.
I noticed that one.
Yeah,
never able to see
everyone has them. We don't very often see them in close-up, but I think every soldier is there and everyone is different. Look at that lovely bit of 50s Bakelite. Oh, gorgeous
I just love that the effect of the screen there.
Yes. And then we took a Subaru Velak from later on in the show and added it to this so that he actually says it. Oh, that's so touching. I love that moment. His little look on his face. He's so pleased to see her and then so sad he can't actually get to her.
They are quite heart-wrenching, aren't they?
Yes, well,
and because it's a testament to the animation in that because they don't say that much in those kind of scenes, and so it's all in the animation.
Yes, and grey aliens are not particularly expressive.
Absolutely,
but
not
they
at
make
all.
something with those big sort of almond eyes, and they're very slightly different skin tones as well.
Yeah,
Ryvesh is very grey; she's slightly green, so you can tell them apart, and their whole body language and everything it just is individual to them. They're not sort of identical. I love that. Again, it's just that thing of an animation house and Darren's directing, just thinking about this sort of thing and seeing it through.
Now we have this other element, very strong element of the 1950s B movies thing, the Cold War paranoia built into it, because all those movies were all really about the paranoia of the Russians going to nuke them all, and here it's a central part of this whole story.
And meant that we had to sit down and make sure that the USSR map there was only what Russia had in the 1950s as well.
Very good. I'm very impressed with your attention to detail.
I love this. I kept saying, I wanted a little bit of Max Headroom sort of voice and head jerk in Mr. Dread here, and we couldn't quite do it, so they gave me that little spark.
I loved that when I first saw that, the spark. I loved it.
I love Mr. Dread. Peter Guinness. Brilliant actor, absolutely fantastic. Again, my first choice for Mr. Dread, because I've worked with him before, and I just knew that he would have that absolutely, because it's not a huge part. There's a lot of presence to Mr. Dread in an animation style, but actually, voice-wise, there's probably only half a dozen lines throughout the entire story. But I just needed someone who sounded, please don't take this the wrong way, Peter, who sounded dead. He has a tone to his voice that you believe he's speaking to you from beyond the grave.
That's a great way. It's a great way of looking at him, really.
Yes, and I just love his voice.
Because I think I may well have described them as looking kind of like corpses.
Yes,
in the script.
and that I think is what inspired me to do it. This is such a fantastic sequence.
Yeah,
and then the helicopters coming
Look
up.
at that.
That's brilliant. Very proud of this entire moment. This is. David, that expression on David's face.
Because, of course, this was another original cliffhanger ending, wasn't it?
Yes. Have to be very careful here with guns. Can't have guns pointing at people all the time. So I had to keep saying, he needs to keep that gun moving. It's either pointed at the sky or it's pointed down. You can't keep it trained on the Doctor for too long. And those helicopters, they just keep moving, and I love things like that. There's just thoughts gone into it. I think at one point we got them to actually, when the helicopters go, I wanted to see them go off in the background so they didn't just disappear completely. This is such a good scene. These two guys in the recording studio had such fun doing this sequence. I think we probably did only 2 or 3 takes of this because they just got it. They just knew what they were doing. It's brilliant stuff. Now, there's a bit coming. My only slight disappointment in the whole 45 minutes is this little next moment when Aslok comes through door. I wanted, apart from the door to shatter, I wanted half the concrete to come with him because he's tall enough that he should have taken a lump out there. And we just couldn't get it convincingly done in the animation. It just never worked. So we had to let that go and just focus on the door and put a lot of noise in there.
So we have another reference there to the Viperock's hearing abilities. You can't trust them, and they very good hearing.
I love his little mandibles that move. Everything about Aslok is a great bit of animated design. And he's obviously different from the drones, and he's different from the Queen. So he really... And then this, suddenly we realise he's got wings and he can fly. First time we've seen them flying. And then up into the camera. And this was an end of episode. And then... Love that. That was great. And then look, poor Raivesh. Oh, he's not very well.
Really turn on the waterworks now.
There's a great sarcastic line coming out here from the Doctor when Stark comes in, which David just played for all it was worth, and it was really lovely. I'm trying to get glass everywhere, because I thought, yes, all that glass is actually shattered in and would cut her to pieces. So we made it all come outside.
I'd never noticed that before.
Yes. And you see that, obviously, if people have watched the Sarah Jane Adventures, again, that little bar.
The Ionic
Fusion bar, which is not chocolate, as I keep thinking it should be. It's just my obsession with chocolate when I'm making television programmes like this.
No, it's just your general obsession with chocolate.
Well, there is that, yes. That's a great shot. Brilliant, brilliant shot. You just see him there. Oh, look at her. Fantastic pieces. Again, I wish we'd done more with the Queen because I had no idea how good a design they were going to make her.
She does look fabulous.
Took a long time, but well worth it.
David loved that line as well, didn't he? I remember having a lot of fun with that line.
Tonight we will swarm. I think we've probably got about 10 takes of that, each one of them getting camper and camper as it goes on. These rail tracks. Now, this is in your script, isn't it? I was going to ask you about
this. Is it?
Yeah, I think you mentioned the rail tracks in your script. They were a pain in the neck to animate.
Why would I have mentioned the rail tracks?
I don't know. Maybe it was something Little Loud added in then. But it was a nuisance because we then had to work out a really detailed geography of the inside of this vault to follow the rail tracks. And suddenly in odd shots we'd have them and go, actually they can't be there because the rail tracks went from left to right and now we've got them going from north to south. And
another Indiana Jones moment.
Oh, yes. This is nice. This beautiful sunset tone we put in to give the sort of passage of time as it gets closer and closer to the evening. And that torch. That wretched torch.
Why was it wretched?
Because we have to get rid of it at one point, and we did lots of retakes of animation and discussions with Little Loud saying, at what point can we lose the torch? This is all Darren's idea, the point of view and the fisheye lens and the sort of sparkly Scorpius flies, and I loved all that. I thought that was so inspired and so clever. Lovely shot of the diner.
Beautiful.
Look at that. That's atmospheric. Nice TARDIS as well, I have to say. Oh. It's a very simple thing, but at the same time, it's really good when someone draws a really good TARDIS and actually gets it looking right. So yes, it was right. The only way to deal with this is give her the torch so she can go off with the torch and find what she has to find. And he uses the sonic and then later on has to get rid of it. This is lovely.
I love this whole sequence as they're coming out of the ground. And that moon is beautiful, isn't it? But there's just something about those scenes which to me just looks so good in animation. I don't think would look.
And this was tricky. We did lots of passes of this down. I insisted we had to keep the diner in.
Yeah.
So that we got a sense of scale of where everything was. But actually that made it very, very difficult because it's a cheat because it isn't from Cassie's point of view because we actually have to come back a bit and see Cassie in before Darren could do that brilliant fast zoom into Dry Springs. And this is lovely. I love the design of the Scorpius brain. That's just beautiful.
It was pretty much the way I saw it as well. I do love the relationship between the Doctor and Saruba.
Yes. And again, there's that beat there I said about the scorpion's flies reflected in her eyes.
Yes. Gorgeous.
Isn't it? And get rid of the torch. Yay! Bye-bye, torch. It's little things like that. And I love the way she runs. Because she's small, because she's carrying that thing, she runs brilliantly. That's just great animation.
Favourite bit of the whole thing.
Yes, they're great. It's in development.
See how I try to save you work in the animation? A black screen.
It's a line that got everyone to laugh all the time. Ryan, bless him, who plays all the different soldiers, had to do lots of different voices. I go, right, this is your sergeant voice. This is your corporal voice. This is your radio operator voice. This is your average soldier out in the street voice. And he was brilliant. He just did every single one of them slightly differently. Love this, the explosions, and then they take off and fly.
See, this again is something that we'd never have been able to have done, isn't it?
Yes.
You know,
well, it would have been very difficult.
Yeah. That's the great
Sonic
thing.
Reflected in her eyes.
That's what I was going to say. It's the great thing about having those huge eyes. It's room for an awful lot of reflection.
It just gives you a chance to really play with lighting. Yeah. I'm a big fan of lighting and colour. I think they're two things that really help sell a story. And this story gave us a chance to use tons of different styles of lighting and different styles of animation. Oh, and there goes Dry Springs. And I really wanted that Jurassic Park homage of the reflection in the window, mirror.
I love this bit, which wasn't, I don't think, in the script, where he puts his hand on hers.
Yes.
There.
Nice end of episode coming up. I said, take the camera past that and straight into that face. I like speed. Animation gives you a good chance to do good speed like that.
Meanwhile, back in the operations room.
And it's Battle of the Flying Things. Rah! That is the worst pun in the world ever. And everybody laughs at that all the time, and quite right too. But it's a brilliantly bad pun.
Somebody asked me what my favourite line was that I'd ever written. That's the one I always say.
This is our little, I keep using the word homage. This is our little homage, I think, to the opening title sequence of Thunderbirds. You'll see in the next time we go back to that, which I think is in a couple of minutes' time, we blow up the oil tower, which is straight out of, and then the words filmed in Super Mario Nation really should have gone across the top of it. This is a nice sequence. I was very keen. He picks up the gun, and in a minute, the other one knocks the gun out of his hand, and it completely depowers Stark. Finally, it's like he's lost his gun, he's lost his tool. There it goes. There it is in Super Mario Nation, and it just meant that when you next see Stark, and he's being supported by them, and he's lost his power, he's completely defeated.
Because that's the point about the Viperox. You know that they, they're bugs, but they overcome all technology.
Yes.
Really.
Well, it's like that thing they always say, if there was a nuclear war, the bugs and the cockroaches are the things that will survive. And I think that's exactly what the Viperox are. They're just this universal race doing their kind of... doing a reign of terror across the whole universe. And our animated TARDIS. I love this.
Fantastic, isn't it? Holy smokes.
Very fond of that shot.
There is just so much that goes on in this, isn't there? Really?
And then in the background, you're also hearing very faintly, and it gets louder and louder as the thing goes on, all the gun battles and everything going on. Lisa Bauman, who plays Saruba Velak, is somebody I wanted to try and get. Originally, I was trying to get her into Infinite Quest, and there just wasn't a part for her. So again, first choice for this. Love Lisa. She's a brilliant actress. Again, not a huge part, but she really just made it memorable.
Yes.
You
Well, they
think
all
again,
did.
she's in it far more than she actually is.
Well, as I've said and will continue to say, it was such an amazing cast. You know, you get to that point that you watch it and you think, I just wish I'd written so much more for them. But if I'd done that, it would have been about 3 hours long.
Well, it was originally, wasn't it? We did cut because
Well, it was 60 minutes.
it was 60 minutes, and one of the little subplots that we lost, which I know you weren't happy with, is you had Elvis Presley here. Didn't you?
Elvis Presley, yes.
From when he was in his
Which
his
was
army
actually
days.
the whole reason it was set in 1958. To be honest, it could have been any time in the 1950s, but Presley was actually in the army in 58, and that was why I chose that year.
And then cruelly, I made you take it all out.
Yeah, because Presley should have actually have met them when they come out of the vault. He's the soldier that Starks left to escort them back. We saw a little bit of heroics from old Elvis, but
Sorry, Phil.
Yeah.
I'm a hard taskmaster. I really am.
that script will be worth a fortune.
Love this. Love this.
And there you go, yeah. So it just seemed like a brilliant idea to actually turn that thing into one of those kind of things that you plug into the house, that, you know, ultrasonics that keeps your house bug free.
I don't have one of those in my house. I
No,
don't
we
have
don't either.
ultrasonics. but I'm glad you think people do have ultrasonic things in their house.
I've seen them for sale on
I love
shopping
this.
channels.
Yeah, no, there goes the sign. And that little house, all the way through the animation, we were watching, going, making sure the house is still there. Make sure the house is still there. Where's the house?
I just love this spacecraft.
It's
though, because
fantastic,
It just
isn't it?
looks so much like a bug.
And it looks powerful. And
God,
again,
yeah.
it just keeps that thing of the Viperox just being so powerful and believable. And then whoosh, off it goes.
Marvelous.
A lot of beautifully designed for such a small shot, and the house is still there. Look, and then we're at the end. It was, I have to say, it was great fun working with Georgia. I worked with Georgia back in my Big Finish days. She did her first ever audio work for me, working with her dad, Peter Davison. And it was really nice, sort of 10 years later, to work with her again and just go, wow, she's just such an accomplished actress, and she's so brilliant and so instinctively good at everything. She's fantastic. And she and Tim as Jimmy, they just really did make a very good team,
Yeah,
very
it
good,
was
believable couple in this.
Gary, it was marvellous casting. What can I say?
Bye-bye, aliens. Love this shot.
There we go.
That's brilliant.
Wasn't that, if I remember correctly, wasn't that David's idea about the saluting thing
Yes.
on the day when we were
Yes,
there?
absolutely. He was just came up with that, and it just worked brilliantly. And I really wanted this final shot of the TARDIS dematerializing and just leaving the whole beautiful desert background behind it. Oh, look.
Off he goes to get his dim sum.
I love that. It's fantastic. So there you are. Doctor Who Dreamland. Well done, Phil.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Gary. It was a team effort, mate.
And thank you, everybody that worked on it, at both Little Loud and at the BBC, and Anwin and everyone in her team for producing it, and obviously Russell and Julie for working so hard and trusting us with it.
Thank you so much.